your creativity and coax out inner thoughts and feelings that might otherwise be hard to access. For example, on page 50, you're given the prompt, write your obituary. This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Rushing from the door to the living room couch, Aubrey excitedly said, "Do you want to watch Star Trek?" "Do you like that show?" Fred responded with a neutral tone. "Yeah, it's my favorite. It's so good. Do you?" "Yeah, let's watch it," Fred replied. The two watched the show quietly for the rest of the afternoon until Fred's parents came and picked him up.
In the city of Cyprus in 300 BC, there lived a very wealthy trader called Zeno. While on a voyage from Phoenicia to Piraeus, his boat sank along with all of his cargo. Because of that single event, an event that was entirely out of Zeno's or anyone's control, this very wealthy man suddenly became poor in an instant. Imagine you were Zeno. How would you react to your entire life's work getting flushed down the drain by the sheer force of nature? What is the proper reaction? Would you be angry, sad? Would you feel life has cheated you? For most of us, these would all be normal reactions. But not for Zeno, the father of Stoicism. One small change lasts an eternity, and one small reframing of your mindset can cascade into larger and more impactful changes later down the line. The core of Stoicism is the very definition of acceptance and indifference. After reading the works of Socrates and other great philosophers, Zeno created and taught Stoicism. According to Zeno, although we don't have much control over what happens to us, we do have control of how it affects us, and we must use this control to great effect. Rather than crying over spilled milk, or in this case, drowned goods, Zeno focused on maintaining his composure over the situation, remaining calm and neutral, despite his predicament. Today, people inadvertently view Stoics as people who cannot be broken, people who don't often linger to the emotional extremes, going through things like fits of rage or bouts of anxiety. But the original idea behind Stoicism was much more than that. Rather than just a way to describe people who are unemotional, Stoicism was a way to view, describe, and understand the world. It was a way of life, and that way of life has lasted for centuries. Stoic philosophy can be applied to situations today the same way it was applied thousands of years ago, and its benefits are just as impactful. Stoicism allows us to process these negative emotions from negative experiences, and turn them into the thoughts that give us a unique perspective of the world. Perspective is everything, and everyone in the world has different experiences and thus different perspectives on things. Since the Stoics gathered, discussed, and taught philosophy in a public place, their general philosophy was widely known. They believed that the Stoic principles could greatly benefit anyone and everyone, and so it didn't make sense for them to hide that knowledge behind the four walls of a school or of the palace courtyards. As a result, everyone from slave to emperor could learn and become a Stoic. And they did. Some of the world's most notable Stoics include Epictetus, which translates to acquired, as he was once owned as a slave, Seneca, who was a well-renowned statesman, and Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and one of the most powerful men to have ever lived. The early Stoics practiced what they preached, avoiding all forms of segregation and leading the fight against inequality. They even invented the word cosmopolitan, which literally means citizen of the world. When people hear that word now, we think of cities like New York, Toronto, Dubai, and London because of how diverse they are. This was the type of unity and togetherness that the Stoics preached. Even at a time when it wasn't popular, women were allowed to freely learn about Stoicism and become Stoics themselves. So why do so many people adopt Stoicism as a way of life? In a world full of unexpected turns of events, our emotions can tend to get in the way of things. In reality, we don't really get sad because bad things happen to us, we get sad because unexpected bad things happen to us. Rain is a good thing. It helps to water our plants, provides water for livestock, and keeps the temperature cool and humid. But the truth is, when that dark cloud catches you outside without an umbrella, it's never a good experience. So why don't we start crying once it starts to rain? It's because although the situation is bad, we've learned to expect rain. It's something that is unavoidable. We can't control the weather. Although it sucks, the rain passes and the light returns. Stoicism teaches us that, in the same way, we should expect that everything bad that can happen will happen. Picture the worst outcome, and be content knowing it could happen. One of the Stoic exercises is known as voluntary discomfort. An exercise aimed at
Hey,
increasing
Knives
feeling.
here. I'm going to teach you how artist should check him out. As usual, before we start, let me introduce what we already have. So here is our test scene. It's just a plain node 2D as our left body. It's inside of a player group, and all it does is just move player. It's a kinematic body. It's inside of a player group, and all it does is just moving. And then we have our bullet. Here is our bullet. It has a sprite, a collision shape, and a visibility notifier. Here it doesn't do any damage. All it does is just moving in a certain direction, and this direction is determined by the rotation of the node. So, without further ado, let's start working on our turret. Create a new node. It's gonna be a 2D scene. Name it to a turret. And now we need to properly set up our node tree. Here it is. Base sprite, gun sprite, raycast 2D, and a reload timer as a child of raycast. Now let's set up the sprites. For the gun sprite, we choose the turret face. In the animation, set the V-frames to 10. I'm not gonna use it animated, I will use the first frame. If you want to animate it, sure, go ahead, but it's not a topic for this tutorial. So, and the raycast, first of all enable it and cast it to 250 by 0 and save it. Now our node 3 is ready. Let's create a script, turret, create. And first thing, of course, we need to define the variables. So here is our bullet packed scene. Then goes the target. The target will be our player and our onReady variables. Now, let's define the main functions like shooting and finding the target. Shooting is, as you can see, it prints pew, it disables our raycast, and it creates a bullet and starts the reload timer. So the state of raycast, when it's enabled, it means it's reloaded and we can shoot. It's the way we determine if we can shoot or not. Here raycast disables, but then we start a reload timer and we will enable it once again when it stops. Our find target is just a way to find our player. It calls the level 3 and get all the nodes in the group player, and we get the player from it, which is the first and in fact the only node in this whole array. So now let's connect our reload timer, timeout, signal, and here we just set our raycast enabled to true. And by the way, I forgot that here we can change the wait time to 0.25 and one shot to on. And now we need to add the ready and the physics process functions so it all works out. In the ready function, all we do is wait one frame, so we just make sure that every node in the tree loads and is ready to be used, and then we find our target, which is our player. And in the physics process, we check if the target is not null. In other words, if the player exists, then we determine the angle to it, we set our raycast to be pointing in this direction, and then we check. If the raycast collides with it and it's a player, then we also rotate our gun sprite, and if we can shoot, we shoot. So, now, don't forget to set your bullet here and save the scene. And we're done. Now go to test scene, instance child, turret. Let's place it here and let's check it. Here we go. So, that's it for this short tutorial. I hope you found it helpful and you
everyone, and we'll select this. I think that'll be it. And this guy, what is it called? Paint bucket, and just fill it in. So now when we play, we have this little guy. Obviously the camera's too small, it's too zoomed in, so we're not gonna actually add a camera, but as long as we can see it, it's fine. So that'll be it for today's video. This was a good start to just set up our tile set. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully you guys kind of understand how to set up your own tile map now. We've gone through... No, welcome back everyone. Where is it? PNG expect. It might be a bit different than most other do it is really smart. But I'm gonna kind of approach it my way. So hold my cameras for a second. We scroll down. One other thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into project settings. In filter settings, I'm gonna go for filter. Search up filter. I'm gonna go to texture, and here we're gonna do nearest and close. And you should be able to see our pixel, but we can full screen this. So now when I play, so add our path. So there's two things we need. We have the path 2D and path follow 2D. So let's add our path 2D and then path follow 2D. So the path follow 2D is how we draw the actual path. The path 2D is the actual curve essentially. So we're going to select the path 2D. Oh, no, sorry, in our path 2D. Yeah, sorry. Path 2D, there we go, you can see it selected. And on the top, we should be able to see the points. So now what we can do is we can add points. We can just go here and start adding points along the path. And I can kind of fix it out later. We can make sure the dirt path is a bit bigger, and we'll make sure that it can fit the path. Or it can fit the actual thing. Okay, so there we go. We've made a path. Let's save. And now we should be able to basically just add our soldier. So if we go here into the bottom and add our soldier that we saved, we can add it, but nothing will happen yet. So in our soldier, we're going to actually add a script. We're not going to add this. We're going to add a default node. Let me just go to my script reference. Okay. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to have an export speed. I'm going to do 1,000, which is pretty fast, but you can do like 100. 100 is not bad either. So the first line we're going to do is we're going to get our parent, which is going to be the path follow 2D. And then we're going to set progress to the current progress plus our speed times delta. So the progress is right here. So we can see our player actually. Let's actually go into here and double the player size. So now we can see it a bit clearer. Now if I move the progress, the player moves along or the mob moves along the line, right? Okay, so now with that line, we should be able to see our player move actually. And it's taking a second for my thing to load, but yeah, you can see the guy moving along. So now we can see it. And then we're going to set progress to the current progress plus our speed times delta. So the progress is 100 is not bad either. So the first line we're going to do is we're going to get our parent, which is going to be the path follow 2D. And then we're going to set progress to the current progress plus our speed times delta. So the progress is right here. So we can see our player actually. Let's actually go into here and double the player size. So now we can see it a bit clearer. Now if I move the progress, the player moves along or the mob moves along the line, right? Okay, so now with that line, we should be able to see our player move actually. And it's taking a second for my thing to load, but yeah, you can see the guy moving along. Awesome. And the problem is that you might have been able to see is the path follow 2D resets. So the first thing we can do is unloop that so we can make sure it's not on loop. And then there's one more line we're going to add to make sure that our game kind of functions properly, which is once the get progress ratio is equal to 1, then we're just going to Q3. The reason why we can do this is because in here, we can see the progress ratio. If we complete it all the way to 1, it'll be at the end. That means it's done. So that's the ratio of it. Awesome. Next up, we're going to figure out how do we actually add several monsters spawning at the same time. Well, there's an issue which kind of persists here, which you might think, okay, well, I could just add several soldiers. However, it's dependent on the actual follow path 2D. So we're gonna make local, yeah, in mobs, why not? Timer now. And super simple, we're gonna delete all this. We're gonna onReady path done over and over. We're gonna create the temp path to, but it is following the path correctly. So let's see what's going on. Let's go to path 2D here. And as we can see, this path looks fine. Something is, let's, all right, welcome back everyone. This is going to be, okay, the override, it's basically a third of the actual, something like this. All right, and we see our little soldier. So we're not gonna use camera, but if you want, first let's add we're going to add zoom in far enough. And we're also going to add a area 2D. And then we're also going to add a regular node. I'm gonna explain why we need that later, which will be fun. And in our area 2D, we're gonna duplicate the shape and we're just gonna drag that in. Okay, and lastly, the sprite. So it's gonna be 250, I believe. Yeah, 250. And for the node or the sprite, so generally in Godot, usually most things, when we rotate them, or we're gonna be using a function called look at, but when we look at something, generally it's as if we're looking to the right, and then we're gonna rotate it towards whatever we're looking at, right? So in order to make this like properly look at things, we're gonna have to change the rotation in our tower to 90 degrees. And then we're also gonna go to the scale. Yeah, the scale, we're gonna double it because it's pretty small. The marker, we're actually gonna put at the tip of the tower there. And for the collision shape of this guy, we're gonna make it like this big. We're gonna make it as big as you want, really. But I'm gonna make it cover the tower. And then this guy, we're gonna give it a circle, and we're just gonna give it as big of a range as we want. I'm actually gonna copy the radius. I'm gonna do 448. There we go. That's the radius I did in my reference. And then lastly, we're gonna change this to area. We're going to change this to tower, and then I'm gonna add a script. I'm gonna add a tower script. All right, we're gonna actually in the middle. Okay, and lastly, the sprites. We're looking to right, make this. Let's give it a collision. I'm going to add that script. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to add. No, before we add everything. Now let's make our bullet before we even start typing. Give it a. We're gonna be small. The marker, the collision, make it like this big. Give it a circle, and we're just gonna give it as big of a range as we want to do. Lastly, going to change and add a script. I'm gonna add a tower. Tower.
scene, it's just a plain node 2D as our what we already have. So here is our test scene, it's just
and then you but if you let's see. And then we're also going to add a need. We're going to add a marker 2D. This is where we're going to spawn, or the position we're going to spawn our bolts. So we can actually move that out, and you can see it if you zoom in far enough. And we're also going to add and add that script. Awesome. Okay, same thing for this guy. We're going to actually kinematic body. body or character body, because it's kind of a homing device, right? We're homing towards that soldier. So we need it to be character 2D body. Let's give it a collision shape. Collision shape. There we go. And now let's select all of this.
Just a plain node is just moving in a certain direction, and this direction is determined as it's just moving in a certain direction.